Every time I visit the WWE network, yes, we still have it over here, their best of WWE compilations catch my eye. To date, they've produced over 100 of these, and they come out about monthly based on events or anniversaries that are coming up, or even wider cultural events. I once heard a man named John Carlin, who worked for WWE for 23 years in various roles, from acquiring video libraries to being an instrumental part of the early WWE network, give a fascinating interview on the WrestleNomics podcast, where among other things he explained that these started life during the pandemic as a way to sell older content to sports broadcasters who were struggling for programming while no live sports were running. Since then, I've also seen these specials as DVD releases in shops, so they must be making some money off them. In this video, I'm not going to be addressing too much of the stories around the matches, as some of those are rabbit holes in themselves. I'm going to be going through all the matches with the mindset of, does each one belong in a best of compilation? Did they miss any glaring matches out, and are these worth your time? I'm also not going to try and spoil too much, in case you want to watch any of these matches for yourself. The most recent best of that WWE released was on November 17th, called Starrcade Spectacular. Starrcade in its Jim Crockett Promotions years was a Thanksgiving tradition, but the 88 event, and every one after it, occurred in December, largely due to WWE introducing Survivor Series the year prior as their Thanksgiving competitor. WWE going out of their way to spite other companies? No! In recent years, WWE brought the name back, holding house shows around Thanksgiving in 2017, 18 and 19, in North Carolina, Ohio and Georgia. Even on the first one, allowing Goldust to break character and wrestle as the natural Dustin Rhodes. More on him later. Starrcade through the years has had some truly great moments, and more than a few dodgy ones as well. So I was really interested to see what would be chosen for the list. Going in, there was one match I absolutely hoped would be here, and if we get to it, I'll let you know what that is. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on the matches coming up, so let me know what you think in the comments. We begin on a high note with a legit classic match. The dog collar match itself is one of the rarest stipulations you ever see, probably because no matter how you do it, wearing that dog collar while wrestling must be a grueling experience. It's the kind of match you have to be super tough or mentally committed to take part in, and Piper vs Valentine for years has been thought of as the quintessential version. I'd like to argue though, that the two AEW ones and the FTR vs the Briscoe matches were also great, but have we had any truly great ones in between? Let me know if I'm forgetting any. From the start, the announcers Gordon Soley and Bob Caudle go to great lengths to put the collars and the chain between them as over as possible, which is so important in a match like this. The more we see a weapon used, the easier it is for it to lose its sting, so perhaps it helps that a chain connecting two wrestlers by the neck is seldom seen. More importantly though, Piper and Valentine do an excellent job of making this match look brutal, largely because it was. On an event subtitled A Flair for the Gold, featuring Ric Flair defeating Harley Race for the NWA World Title, his second world title win, but also the one considered to be his coronation. This being the match they chose speaks volumes as to how good it is. It undoubtedly deserves to be on this list. Admittedly, having been aware of this match for maybe 20 years, mainly because of its finish, I'd never actually seen it until making this video, which for me feels like admitting that I've never seen Star Wars. The most famous I Quit matches since this one have relied on all manner of gimmicks to push wrestlers to their extremes, such as Mankind crashing through what Michael Cole called the electrical circuit board with suspicious pyro inside at the '99 Royal Rumble, or Batista quitting while on John Cena's shoulders as John threatened to adjust his attitude off a car. Incidentally, and a bit off topic, while researching this I realised that John Cena has had 4 I Quit matches and won them all. Back to Magnum and Tully. Their I Quit match was focused on these two men hating each other, and the emphasis being put on how degrading it would feel for one man to surrender to the other. The match is fitting of the story going in. An ugly brawl in a confined space, with the microphone not working as they expected it to. I loved this match. It was dramatic and tense without the need for any histrionics. I won't spoil the finish, but it's perfect for this match. And to my mind, this match absolutely needs to be seen by all. We move on to a world title match from the '88 Starrcade. There are certain things you expect to see in a WCW compilation, and Ric Flair in a world title match is one of them. Looking at the list of opponents he had world title matches with in the history of this event, including Dusty Rhodes twice, Harley Race, Nikita Koloff, Sting, Ronnie Garvin, Vader and Randy Savage, Lex Luger is maybe an interesting choice. This is also Flair's longest Starrcade match at 31 minutes. This match was the peak of a story that had been building through 1988, with Luger joining the Horsemen only to be turned on, now coming for Flair's gold. I always find babyface Lex Luger slightly jarring to watch. He's just one of those wrestlers that I feel was way better as a bad guy. The first half of the match sees Lex in almost complete control, with Flair routinely cowering away, much as he would later on in his famous matches with Sting. It gets more interesting though, when Flair finds that he can gain the upper hand by being more aggressive outside the ring. However, this comes at the risk of being disqualified. And as per a stipulation of this match, if Flair gets DQ'd, he loses the world title to Luger, in maybe the only time I can think of that stipulation was used well. From here, the match gets far more engaging, and not knowing the result going in, it felt like either man might win. Approaching this match, I wasn't sure if it would be best of worthy, when watched just in a vacuum without seeing the nearly year of story beforehand, but it definitely is. This might not be one of Flair's best matches, but it could well be one of Luger's, and it helped that the crowd were with him all the way. The next match on the compilation is the semi-main of the '92 event. To end the night, the Great Muta won the Battle Bowl tournament, where wrestlers qualify for a Battle Royal by winning a tag match with a randomly chosen partner earlier in the night. Meanwhile, Sting vs Vader was more of a conventional tournament final, ending the 8-man King of Cable tournament, which had been taking place on television. Earlier in '92, Vader had defeated Sting at the Great American Bash for the WCW World title, so this would be the return bout on pay-per-view. This was also the second of 3 matches for both men on this show, as they had also qualified for the Battle Bowl final earlier in the night, which would take place right after this match. Just when I thought this match was going to be too similar to the Flair vs Luger match I just watched, in which Luger is clearly the more powerful and uses that to his advantage frequently, Sting shocked me by hitting a German suplex on Vader. It seemed to shock Vader too, as somehow his mask came off never to be seen again. In the end, what could have really hurt this match, both men being clearly tired from wrestling earlier, actually helps the story being told, as Sting does his best to try and outlast Vader, even drawing him in and taking some brutal looking punches in an effort to wear the big man out. This one also belongs on the best of, but I nearly decided it didn't until the tense last few minutes and a great finish. I'll admit I probably watched this with a bit of a bias, as Dustin Rhodes is one of those wrestlers that was never a top star, but I've always been a fan of. Also, it's friggin' Steve Austin on the other side of the ring. Not just Steve Austin, but Hollywood blonde, yet very much Texan, Steve Austin. I also once saw another match between these two that I liked a lot, a 15-minute draw from Halloween Havoc 91. This one is a 2 out of 3 falls match for the WCW US title, and is one of the longer matches on this compilation at 23 minutes. If you only knew Stone Cold from his latter years, you could be forgiven for not knowing that earlier in his career, he was a very good wrestler too. It also amuses me when Tony Schiavone claims on commentary that these two will dominate WCW into the next decade. Well, not quite, Tony. In case you couldn't tell, I gave this match a green tick as well. I promise there's some crosses coming soon, but not yet, as the next match is also from the '93 Starrcade, and it's the match I referenced at the start that I hoped would be on this show. I don't quite know why, as this match isn't a technical classic by any means, but it's one that I absolutely love, and go back to maybe once a year. It's a match where not just Vader's WCW World title was on the line, but also Ric Flair's career. Given some of the events of recent years, I wonder if Ric wishes he might have lost on that night. Given that Vader had already defended the title against Flair on a recent Clash of the Champions, Flair had to put his career at risk before Vader would accept his challenge. The legacy around this match, in brief, is Flair not being willing to take Vader's stiff style like others did. Unlike Shawn Michaels, who dealt with Vader in his own way, Flair fought back, and in turn, the match felt more dramatic for it. Flair's version of events from his podcast is that he and Vader planned nothing going in, but when Vader was punching too hard, Flair, quote, lit him up, and blackened both his eyes. He specifically mentions an exchange outside the ring, where he really goes after Vader. Ric Flair is not a man well associated with shooting in matches, quite the opposite in fact. Flair claimed in the 30 for 30 documentary about his life that he would, as a younger man, practice his work punches by hanging up a piece of string and attempting to convincingly punch it without the string moving. When people talk about the best punchers in wrestling, names like Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk come up a lot, but I've got to give Flair some credit for that too. This one also gets a tick from me. It wouldn't be a WCW list without some good cruiserweight action. In 2018, Rey Mysterio went to New Japan, debuting on the same night as the famous Omega vs Okada rematch, so it's fair to see why Rey being there might have been forgotten by many fans. He wrestled one more match for them later in the year, even challenging Jushin Thunder Liger to a match that would never take place, as Rey would re-sign with WWE. Thankfully though, we still have their match in WCW, which took place at the '96 Starrcade. A very svelte-looking Mysterio was just 6 months into his WCW career, but had spent half of those 6 months as Cruiserweight Champion, beating Dean Malenko in only his 5th televised match in July, and losing it back to Dean in October. Liger, however, while not a WCW regular, had been appearing for the company since '91, so you could consider him established. His first pay-per-view being the '91 Starrcade, taking part in the Battle Bowl tournament that I referenced earlier. Back to their '96 match. Rather annoyingly, the crowd greets the Hispanic and Japanese wrestlers with a USA chant at the opening bell. It's really cool, by the way, to hear recent Impact Hall of Famer Mike Tenay on commentary, as the professor has long been renowned for his knowledge of international wrestling. In the early going, this match might not be what you expect, as Liger keeps the pace slow. He uses his size and power over Rey. However, when Rey gets control, the match speeds up noticeably. The match isn't really helped by there being 4 commentators, Schiavone, Heenan, Tenay, and Dusty Rhodes, bickering from time to time, with Dusty halting everyone in their tracks by being amused at Tenay calling a Dragon Screw leg whip. Is this one of the greatest Starrcade matches? Likely not, but it's certainly not a bad one, and it's still cool to see these two in a singles match. While it's easy to see why the match between these two legends was picked, there is another match from the same show that could possibly have been chosen over it. In the opener of the night, Dean Malenko defended the Cruiserweight title against Ultimo Dragon, in arguably the better match of the two. Oh boy. Well, at least this wasn't their naff cage match that happened at the 97 Halloween Havoc. The match that Jim Cornette and a ranty did on Raw called Age in a Cage, around the same time as the creation of Hell in a Cell. Like Ric Flair, there's another thing that's a given on a WCW compilation: NWO interference. If you can't tell, I fully expected this match to be not very good. One thing that it is, it's profoundly strange to see a heel Hulk Hogan, still a fairly new heel Hogan by the way, against a babyface Rowdy Roddy Piper. As when you think of these two, you tend to think of their 80s WWF days, where the roles were reversed. Admittedly, I didn't find this as bad as I expected, but there was a whole lot of Hogan stalling around ringside, as well as a fan run-in as a suspiciously timed moment when the referee was right about to see some outside interference. It might well have been real, but the timing made it look sus. Add to that a confusing finish that I won't reveal here, but it involves the belt Hogan carried to the ring. Should this be on here? Maybe not, when you could have included Hogan vs Sting from 97, which had an even more dodgy finish and is a way more famous match, though it's also worth noting that they made a load of these specials by now, so I may be looking for some less famous matches to include. It's very interesting to me that they didn't include anything from the last 3 WCW Starrcades, so this technically is your main event. It's also from a fairly critically panned pay-per-view, with this match, the opener by the way, oft considered the best of the night. By December 97, Dean and Eddie knew each other very well, having wrestled many times in WCW and before that in ECW. As a result, this match includes some very cool counters, such as Eddie going for his arm drag off the top rope, only for Dean to catch him with a stiff-looking powerbomb. While I would never call this a bad match, I still wouldn't call it one of the best of Starrcade. One match I'd have included over this is the Triangle Ladder match from the 2000 Starrcade, between 3 Count, the Young Dragons, and the team of Jamie Noble and Evan Courageous. Or if you want bigger stars, but still want the Cruiserweight theme, the Triple Threat match from the 98 Starrcade, between Billy Kidman, Juventud Guerrera and Rey Mysterio. So what's my final verdict? If you, like me, aren't the most expert WCW fan, the early half of this compilation might be for you, but the latter might have you looking for alternatives. It's also interesting that every match they chose was a singles match. Surely there could have been some tag teams thrown in to provide something different, as 9 singles matches in a row took me a while to get through. Overall, I would recommend this best of, and I look forward to finding out what WWE Network has in store for December's Best of WWE. Thank you for watching yet another wrestling channel. If you enjoyed this, please comment, like or subscribe.